Townshend and Entwistle met while attending high school in London's Shepherd's Bush area. In their early teens they played in a Dixieland band, with Entwistle on trumpet and Townshend on banjo. By the early 60s the pair had formed a rock and roll band, but in 1962 Entwistle joined the Detours, a hard-edged group featuring a sheet metal worker named Roger Daltrey on lead guitar. By the end of the year Townshend had joined as a rhythm guitarist, and in 1963 Daltrey became the band's lead vocalist after Colin Dawson left. The group's sound evolved rapidly, influenced not only by American acts such as James Brown, Booker T and the MGs and Eddie Cochran, but also by one classic British act Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, who rocked the British charts with an original called Shakin All Over. They built their reputation on fierce renditions of American-style R&B which relied on a lean single guitar, bass, drums approach with the guitarist playing lead and rhythm, a rarity in England at the time. Townshend, realizing that approach suited him, became the band's lone guitarist. A name change also followed with the Beatles burning up the charts. They needed something more striking than the Detours. Daltrey and Townshend settled on The Who, which initially confused people in conversation, but had a memorable effect on posters. Amid these changes, original drummer Doug Sandom, who was married and considerably older than the others, parted ways with the band just as they were about to attempt cutting a record. The group replaced him with Keith Moon, previously the drummer for the surf rock group the Beachcombers. As the group struggled to catch a break, Townshend attended art school while the remaining three worked odd jobs. The band became regulars at the Marquee Club in London and attracted a small following, leading to the interest of manager Pete Meaden. Under his direction the Who were renamed the High Numbers and dressed in sharp suits to appeal to style and R&B-obsessed mods. Many R&B-oriented groups tried to cultivate relationships with the mods, who could fill clubs and help propel a record onto the charts. Among those who succeeded most, besides the Who, were the Small Faces and the Move. The High Numbers released one single, I'm the Face. After it bombed, they began working with Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp, two fledgling music business entrepreneurs. Lambert was the son of composer or arranger Constant Lambert. Stamp was the brother of actor Terence Stamp, and both wanted to make their mark on England's percolating music scene. Lambert spotted the group playing at the Railway Hotel in the wake of I'm the Face and brought in Stamp. Lambert and Stamp encouraged them to embrace the mod movement, advising them on what to play and where, including the Target t-shirt that became a visual signature. The group reclaimed the Who name and began playing a set consisting entirely of soul, R&B and Motown, as their posters said, maximum R&B. During this period Townshend smashed his first guitar at a gig at the Railway Hotel by accident. A temporary stage extension built by the band caused him to hit the ceiling with his guitar. Frustrated by the damage and the crowd's reaction, he struck it until it was in pieces. He was only able to finish the show by using a recently acquired 12-string Rickenbacker. The following week he discovered that people had come to see him smash his guitar. He eventually obliged with encouragement from Keith Moon, who attacked his drum kit. At first Lambert and Stamp were appalled, but Townshend soon demolished another guitar as part of Lambert's publicity campaign. He didn't smash guitars at every show in those days. What he was doing in terms of generating feedback sufficed in most audiences' minds. It did enhance their status with the mods. By late 1964, they developed an enthusiastic following. Mods loved destruction as part of an act. At the end of 1964 Townshend presented the group with an original song called I Can't Explain, which owed a little to the Kinks' You Really Got Me, but had lots of fresh angles. Townshend's lyrics gave a vivid impression of teenage angst, perfect for Daltrey's powerful vocals and the band's full-bore attack. The result was equally punchy, sensitive and macho, with a mean lead guitar and even some harmonies. The band and their managers thought it seemed like a great potential debut single for the newly rechristened Who. So did producer Shel Talmy, an American based in England who was producing the Kinks records. Talmy got the band a contract with the American Decca Records label on the strength of I Can't Explain and followed it with a contract with English Decca. The Tell Me-produced single arrived to little attention in January 1965, after the group's incendiary performance on the television program Ready Steady Go, which featured Townshend and Moon destroying their instruments. I Can't Explain reached the British top 10. Their next single, That Summer's Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, declared the mod ethos to the world: I can go anywhere. While it wasn't far removed from the mentality behind early rock and roll anthems, The Who made it sound resolutely English. That fall, My Generation climbed to number 2 on the charts, confirming their status as a British pop phenomenon. An album of the same name appeared at year's end, featuring various R&B covers and some interesting originals on the UK Brunswick label. Early in 1966, Substitute became their 4th British top 10 hit. Produced by Kit Lambert, the single marked the band's acrimonious split with Tell Me and the end of the group's British Decca or Brunswick recording contract. Lambert and Stamp also tried to scrap the American Decca deal, but that proved impossible. Starting with Substitute, the band was signed to Polydor in England and released on Reaction. For a time there were rival releases on Brunswick and Reaction, but the competition was eventually sorted out in Lambert and Stamp's favor. I'm a Boy, released in the summer of 1966, was the first Who single without a rival release on Brunswick, and it showed just how far the band and Townshend had come in 18 months. During this period, Lambert introduced Townshend to a huge range of classical music that broadened his way of thinking about composition, songs and subject matter. I'm a Boy, about a teenage boy forced to dress and act like a girl by his dominating mother, carried an amazing amount of exposition but left plenty of room for the band's furious attack. In their own way, The Who were having as profound effect on rock and roll as the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. They generated immensely popular English singles that redefined the acceptable content and boundaries of pop rock music, and were also some of the era's hardest yet most melodic and complex songs. The story in the United States was very different. I Can't Explain barely created a ripple, and Anyhow, Anywhere didn't do much better despite publicity on the ABC television rock and roll showcase Shindig. Even with Decca getting behind My Generation for a major marketing push, it only got to number 74, a shadow of what it did in England. British success was all well and good, but it wasn't enough. The instrument-smashing routine and the attendant effects were frightfully expensive, and the band was carrying an ongoing debt that drove expenses through the roof. Financial ruin was never far from the thoughts of their management, despite the fact that Lambert and Stamp now had their own Polydor imprint, Track Records, which had a new signing in late 1966, a transplanted American guitarist and singer named Jimi Hendrix. A breakthrough for The Who in America or in the album market in a major way was essential. For their second album, Lambert, Stamp and the band had a more ambitious agenda. Townshend's success at writing singles inspired The Who's managers, and it was decided that this time, every member of the band would contribute songs to generate more revenue. Although this meant a quick one was uneven, Lambert's presence allowed Townshend to write the title track as a 10-minute mini-opera. A quick one while he's away found Townshend writing in idioms far beyond rock and roll, including faux western and faux operetta. Getting dedicated rockers Daltrey and Entwistle to throw their full talents into the music and the track's successful extended narrative showed Townshend and company that this idea had potential. A quick one also provided a canvas for Entwistle's blossoming songwriting. His macabre humor shone through on the catchy Boris the Spider and Whiskey Man, the latter showing off his skills on the French horn. Moon's Cobwebs and Strange was also a suitable moment of light humor, and even Daltrey, whose songwriting aspirations never rated much of his attention, contributed See My Way. A quick one had a diversity of sounds and creative voices, though The Who got relatively little recognition for it at the time. Upon its 1966 release, A Quick One became another British hit, and also provided a minor American breakthrough. Retitled Happy Jack, its title track reached the top 40 in early 1967. To do that, The Who played the US as part of a package tour organized by DJ-turned-impresario Murray the K, booked alongside Cream, Folkies Jim and Gene, and Wilson Pickett, doing short sets 5 times a day. The group got the necessary exposure to a wider public, even though Happy Jack's vocal harmonies and relatively restrained guitars made it an atypical Who song. Their next major U.S. milestone was playing the Fillmore in San Francisco. For that occasion they had a problem that was the reverse of the Murray the K performances. The latter had been too slight at 15 to 20 minutes, but their usual 40-minute sets were too short for the Fillmore. In the Richard Barnes book Maximum R&B, it was recalled that to lengthen their set, they learned the entire mini-opera and the rest of a quick one which they hadn't performed live. After the Fillmore gig in June 1967, they played their most important American show yet, the Monterey International Pop Festival, which put them in a duel with labelmate Jimi Hendrix to see who could end their set more outrageously. Hendrix won with his incendiary performance, but the Who acquitted themselves admirably with a dramatic destruction of their instruments. Reverting to their old stage antics was especially awkward, as they'd finished an album and single that represented a new phase. Constructed as a mock pirate radio broadcast, The Who Sell Out was a concept album and a loving tribute to England's pirate radio stations which had been closed in a government crackdown. The group threw everything they had into the album in order to solidify their position in England and finally crack the US market, including the classic I Can See for Miles. An explosion of excitement and controlled tension, it seemed like a certain chart topper. Daltrey's performance was the best of his career to date, matched by Townshend's slashing guitar, Moon's frenetic drumming and Entwistle's anchor-like bass. It took a lot of work at 3 different studios including Los Angeles' Gold Star on 2 continents and 2 coasts to get that sound. As a consequence, it was so difficult to perform that it became the only hit that they abandoned playing live. It became their first top 10 hit in America and reached number 2 in England, but that wasn't sufficient for what the band or their management needed. In short, in late June 2002, The Who were about to kick off a North American tour when Entwistle died at the age of 57 in Las Vegas' Hard Rock Hotel. In 2006, Townshend and Daltrey released the mini-opera Wire and Glass, their first collaboration as The Who in over 20 years. The full-length Endless Wire, which included the EP, was released later that year to the best reviews of any Who album since Who Are You 28 years earlier. The accompanying tour was similarly well received. On December 2008, at a gala ceremony in Washington, Townshend and Daltrey received Kennedy Center honors for The Who's lifetime contributions to American culture. Townshend rumbled about The Who writing and recording new material, but instead he and Daltrey turned their attention to Quadrophenia, once again touring the album in its entirety. After a full performance in 2010 to benefit the Teenage Cancer Trust, the Quadrophenia and More tour began in the summer of 2012 and ran for over a year, culminating with a July concert at Wembley Arena that was later released as the live package Quadrophenia Live in London. This 2014 release was the opening salvo in a farewell tour with dates in 2015 in cities they hadn't played previously. A hits compilation appeared late in 2014 titled The Who Hits 50. It included the band's first new material in almost a decade with the song Be Lucky. The Who supported The Who Hits 50 with a tour that ran into 2016. Townshend and Daltrey then turned their attention to completing their first album since 2006's Endless Wire. Entitled Who, the record appeared in December 2019. Hitting number 2 in the US and 3 in the UK the following year saw a special archival release of The Who's legendary 1967 Monterey International Pop Festival performance titled A Quick Live One. A super deluxe edition of the landmark The Who Sell Out arrived in 2021. The Who returned to the road in 2022 with The Who Hits Back Tour, augmented by an orchestra for this particular leg of the journey.